85 million Americans take their boats out every year. And according to a 2024 study from the International Maritime Organization, up to 40% of the fuel they burn is fighting drag that shouldn't exist. That's not an engine problem. That's a maintenance problem, a propeller problem, a knowledge problem. Here's the part that stings. The marine industry has known about this for decades. Manufacturers, dealers, mechanics, they've had the data, but almost no one tells you when you buy the boat. We went looking for answers. We talked to engineers, propeller specialists, and one former dealer who finally broke his silence. What they told us? 7 fixes, exposed but never advertised, that can cut your fuel consumption by up to 25%. Some cost nothing, some take 20 minutes, and one has been buried in owner's manuals that almost nobody reads. Before we go further, drop your answer in the comments. How much do you spend on fuel each season? And if you're tired of learning the hard way what the industry already knew, hit subscribe and tap that bell, because this is just the beginning. Now, let's follow the money and find out where yours has really been going. Walk into any boat show in America and you'll be surrounded by promises. Gleaming outboards mounted on polished transoms, banners touting fuel injection, lean burn technology, advanced combustion mapping. The message is clear. Modern marine engines are marvels of efficiency, engineered to squeeze every last mile from every gallon. And in many ways, that message is true. Today's 4-stroke outboards represent a genuine leap forward from the smoky, thirsty 2-strokes of decades past. Mercury, Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda. Each manufacturer has invested billions in research and development, refining fuel delivery systems, optimizing compression ratios, and reducing internal friction to levels that would have seemed impossible in the 1990s. A modern 150 horsepower Yamaha 4-stroke, for example, can cruise at 30 miles per hour while burning roughly 8 gallons per hour. Mercury's V6 4-stroke platform boasts similar numbers. Suzuki's lean burn technology adjusts the air-fuel mixture in real time, trimming consumption at lower throttle settings. These aren't marketing exaggerations. These are verified, repeatable benchmarks, numbers that appear in EPA certification documents and manufacturer spec sheets. When you see a brochure claiming improved fuel economy, there's real engineering behind it. The gains are measurable, the technology is legitimate. But here's where the story turns. Those numbers, the ones printed in the glossy catalogs, the ones repeated by salespeople on showroom floors, are generated under very specific conditions. Controlled conditions, laboratory conditions. EPA testing protocols, which form the basis for most published fuel economy figures, use standardized loads, predetermined RPM bands, and hull types optimized for consistency. The water is calm, the weight is fixed, the trim is perfect. The propeller is matched precisely to the engine's output curve. In other words, the tests are designed to measure what an engine can do, not what it actually does in the hands of a typical owner on a typical day with a typical load. And the gap between those two realities is where your money quietly disappears. A study conducted by the Boat US Foundation examined fuel consumption across 43 recreational vessels under real-world operating conditions. The findings were sobering. On average, actual fuel use ran 18 to 20% higher than manufacturer specifications. Not because the engines were defective, not because the owners were reckless, simply because the conditions of everyday boating, variable loads, imperfect trim, fouled hulls, mismatched propellers, don't mirror the conditions of a controlled test. This isn't a scandal, it's not fraud, it's physics. But it raises an uncomfortable question. If the industry knows that real-world efficiency falls short of published figures, why doesn't anyone say so? The answer lies in incentives. Manufacturers compete on horsepower, on top speed, on features. Fuel economy matters, but it's rarely the headline. Dealers move units by emphasizing performance, not by explaining the variables that erode it. And owners, many of whom are new to boating or simply trust the numbers they're given, never realize there's a conversation they were never invited to. The result is a quiet consensus of silence, not a conspiracy, something more mundane, a system where no one benefits from telling you the whole truth. And so the gap persists. Season after season, tank after tank, boaters across the country burn fuel they didn't need to burn, not because their engines failed them, but because the information that could have saved them was never offered. That's about to change. In the sections ahead, we're going to break down exactly where that excess fuel goes and what you can do to get it back. We spent 3 months reaching out to marine mechanics, propeller specialists, and service technicians across the country, from the Gulf Coast to the Pacific Northwest. From small independent shops to factory-authorized dealerships, we asked the same question: where does the fuel actually go? The answers were remarkably consistent. Not mysteries, not secrets, just facts that rarely make it from the service bay to the sales floor. 7 issues came up again and again, not as speculation but as documented, repeatable causes of excess fuel consumption. Problems that most owners never think to check. Problems that most dealers never think to mention. Let's start with the one that hides in plain sight. Fix number 1. Wrong propeller pitch. Every outboard leaves the factory with a propeller, but that propeller isn't chosen for your boat. It's chosen for broad compatibility, a compromise designed to work reasonably well across a range of hulls, loads, and applications. The problem is, reasonably well and optimally efficient are not the same thing. Propeller pitch, the theoretical distance a prop travels forward in one rotation, determines how hard your engine has to work at any given speed. Too little pitch and the engine over-revs, spinning faster than necessary to maintain pace. Too much pitch and the engine lugs, straining to push water wasn't designed to move. Either way, you burn more fuel than you should. Mercury Marine's own propping guide states that a single inch of pitch change can shift fuel consumption by 8 to 12%. A 2021 analysis by Propeller Depot examined over 1,200 customer boats and found that 67% were running suboptimal pitch for their typical load and use case. The fix is straightforward. Using a GPS and a tachometer, verify that your engine reaches the top of its recommended wide-open throttle RPM range, not the middle, not below. If it doesn't, your prop is wrong. A replacement runs $300 to $600, and the payback in fuel savings often takes less than a single season. Fix number 2, trim neglect. Most boat owners set their trim once, usually when they first learn how to operate the vessel, and never touch it again. This is a mistake that costs money every time the engine runs. Trim controls the angle of the outboard relative to the transom, which in turn affects the boat's running attitude. A bow riding too high creates aerodynamic drag. A bow plowing too low creates hydrodynamic drag. Either condition forces the engine to work harder than necessary. According to naval architecture studies, even 2 to 3 degrees of improper trim angle can increase drag by 6 to 9%. Yamaha's official operation manual recommends adjusting trim every time speed or load changes, advice that appears in print but is almost never emphasized at the point of sale. The fix costs nothing. Learn to read your wake. A properly trimmed boat produces a clean, narrow trail with minimal rooster tail. Adjust in real time as conditions shift. Fix number 3, hull fouling. This one is biological and relentless. Within weeks of launching a boat, marine organisms begin colonizing the hull. Algae first, then slime, then barnacles and other hard growth. Even a thin biofilm layer creates measurable drag. A 2024 report from the International Maritime Organization found that hull fouling can increase fuel consumption by 20 to 40%, depending on severity. Researchers estimate that roughly 9% of global shipping fuel is wasted simply overcoming drag from biological growth. Recreational boats are no exception. And in warm, brackish waters, Florida, the Gulf Coast, the Chesapeake, fouling accelerates dramatically. The fix is maintenance. Clean the hull every 4 to 6 weeks during boating season. Use appropriate anti-fouling paint. For trailered boats, rinse and wipe after every use. The first 3 fixes address hardware and maintenance: propeller selection, trim adjustment, hull condition. The next 4 target something more subtle: operator behavior and the information gaps that sustain it. Fix number 4, the speed trap. There's a specific RPM range where every planing hull achieves peak efficiency. It's the point just after the boat climbs onto plane. Bow down, stern lifted, hull skimming rather than plowing. Below that point, you're fighting physics, pushing water instead of riding on top of it. Above that point, you're paying an exponential penalty in fuel. Most owners don't realize how steep that penalty becomes. Fuel consumption doesn't scale linearly with speed. A boat burning 6 gallons per hour at 25 miles per hour may burn 14 gallons per hour at 40. That's not a 60% increase in speed for a 60% increase in fuel. That's a 60% increase in speed for a 133% increase in consumption. Yamaha's internal training documents describe a sweet spot typically found between 3,500 and 4,500 RPM for most recreational outboards. But finding your boat's specific efficiency curve requires measurement, a GPS, a fuel flow gauge, and a willingness to experiment. The difference between 28 and 34 miles per hour might be $40 per trip. Over a season, that's real money. Fix number 5, weight and balance errors. Every pound on your boat costs fuel. It's that simple. Industry guidelines from the National Marine Manufacturers Association suggest that every 100 pounds of excess load reduces fuel economy by 1 to 2% on planing holes. That may sound trivial until you add it up. A full 30-gallon live well adds 250 pounds. A second anchor you never use, 40 pounds. 3 extra coolers, 60 pounds. Accumulated gear stuffed into compartments and forgotten, another 100 pounds easily. We spoke with one base boat owner in Texas who audited his vessel after years of casual accumulation. He found over 400 pounds of equipment he didn't need and rarely used. That's a 4 to 6% efficiency penalty every single trip for years. The fix is discipline. Remove what you don't need. Distribute what remains evenly, slightly aft of center for optimal planing attitude. Fix number 6, deferred maintenance. Engines don't announce their inefficiencies. They just burn more fuel, quietly, incrementally, until something finally fails. Clogged fuel filters, degraded spark plugs, old gear lube, failing thermostats. Each of these conditions reduces combustion efficiency. Mercury Marine recommends spark plug replacement every 300 hours. Many owners exceed 500 before service. A partially blocked fuel filter can restrict flow enough to cause a 3 to 5% efficiency drop without triggering any warning light. A marine mechanic in Annapolis showed us a fuel-water separator pulled from a 200-hour Verido. It was 60% blocked. The owner had experienced no symptoms, just a mysteriously high fuel bill he'd attributed to rising gas prices. The fix is adherence. Follow manufacturer service intervals. Replace filters annually. Use ethanol-free fuel or appropriate stabilizers. Fix number 7, ignoring modern tech retrofits. Many older outboards, even fuel-injected models, lack real-time feedback systems that would help owners optimize performance. And some newer boats ship with sophisticated gauges that display data no one ever explains. Aftermarket fuel flow meters cost $200 to $500 and provide instantaneous miles per gallon readings. Yamaha's Helmmaster and Mercury's Vessel View systems include fuel economy modes, yet surveys suggest fewer than 30% of owners use them. One charter captain in the Florida Keys installed a basic fuel gauge on his center console. In his first season, he saved $1,100. Not by changing how he ran the boat, but simply by understanding what was happening. By now, a reasonable question emerges. If these fixes are so well documented, so widely known among mechanics and engineers, why doesn't anyone tell boat buyers before they sign the paperwork? The answer isn't conspiracy, it's economics. The dealer equation. Marine dealerships operate on thin margins. The profit on a new boat sale comes primarily from the vessel itself, the trailer, the electronics package, not from post-sale consultations about propeller optimization. A 30-minute conversation about pitch selection doesn't generate revenue. An upsell to a larger engine does. We spoke with a former marine dealer in Texas who spent 15 years on showroom floors before leaving the industry. His explanation was blunt. That conversation doesn't close a sale. It opens questions. Questions lead to hesitation. Hesitation kills deals. Dealers aren't hiding information maliciously. They're responding to incentives. The system rewards volume, not education. The manufacturer calculus. Manufacturers face a similar dynamic. Marketing departments compete on horsepower, top speed, and feature lists. Fuel economy appears in spec sheets, but it's rarely the headline. And there's a quieter truth beneath the surface. Higher fuel consumption means more engine hours, which means shorter intervals between repowers. This isn't cynical engineering. It's simply the absence of counter-incentive. When efficiency information is available but not emphasized, the path of least resistance is silence. Every brochure shows you the top speed, Almost none show you the cost to get there, the owner's resistance. Perhaps the most difficult barrier isn't institutional, it's personal. Many boat owners don't want to hear that they've been doing something wrong for years. Admitting inefficiency feels like admitting ignorance. The culture of my boat, my way resists outside input, even when that input could save thousands of dollars. Fuel cost is often absorbed unconsciously, a vague sense that boating is expensive, that gas prices are high, that this is simply what it costs to be on the water. The idea that a significant portion of that expense is self-inflicted challenges identity as much as budget. The hardest person to convince isn't the manufacturer, it's the owner who's been running the same way for 15 years. The math of recovery. Let's put numbers to the problem. Consider a typical scenario: a 22-foot center console powered by a 200 horsepower outboard. At cruising speed, the engine burns 10 gallons per hour. The owner logs 80 hours per season. A moderate but realistic figure for a weekend boater. That's 800 gallons per year. At $4 per gallon, the annual fuel bill is $30. Now apply the 7 fixes. Not perfectly, not all at once, but incrementally, with realistic expectations. Proper propeller pitch. 10% savings. That's $320. Consistent trim adjustment. 5%. $160. Regular hull cleaning. 7%. $224. Speed optimization. Finding and cruising at the efficiency sweet spot. 12%. $384. Weight reduction. 4%. $128. Maintenance adherence. 4%. Another $128. Fuel monitoring and behavioral adjustment. 3%. $96. Add them together, accounting for overlap and diminishing returns, and the realistic savings range lands between 20 and 25%. That's $640 to $800 per year returned to the owner's pocket without sacrificing performance or enjoyment. Over 5 years, that's $3,000 to $4,000. Over 10 years, the cost of a new outboard. And none of it requires buying a new boat. None of it requires exotic technology. Just attention, information, and the willingness to act on what the industry has always known. We began this investigation with a simple premise, that the fuel disappearing from your tank isn't a mystery. It's a pattern, documented, understood, and addressable. Now it's time to put that knowledge into action. The owner's checklist. These 7 fixes aren't theoretical. They're practical steps any boat owner can implement, starting today. First, check your propeller pitch. Using a GPS at wide open throttle, verify that your engine reaches the top of its recommended RPM range. Not the middle, not below. If it falls short, your prop is costing you fuel every time you leave the dock. Second, learn your trim. Watch the wake behind your boat. A clean, narrow trail with minimal rooster tail indicates proper attitude. Adjust constantly as speed and load change. Trim isn't a set-it-and-forget-it feature. It's a fuel dial. Third, clean your hull. Every 4 to 6 weeks during boating season, inspect and scrub. In warm or brackish waters, fouling accelerates. Even a thin layer of slime creates drag you're paying to overcome. Fourth, find your efficiency sweet spot. Map your boat's fuel consumption across different RPM ranges. Identify the speed where miles per gallon peaks and cruise there. The fastest path isn't always the cheapest. Fifth, audit your weight. Walk through every compartment. Remove gear you haven't touched in seasons. Redistribute what remains for balanced trim. Every 100 pounds matters. Sixth, stay current on maintenance. Follow manufacturer service intervals for spark plugs, filters, and fluids. Don't wait for symptoms. Inefficiency rarely announces itself. Seventh, measure what matters. If your boat lacks a fuel flow gauge, install one. Real-time feedback changes behavior. You can't manage what you don't measure. Print this list. Tape it inside a compartment lid. Reference it at the start of every season. The bigger picture. This isn't about being cheap. It's about being informed. Every dollar wasted on inefficiency is a dollar taken from your time on the water, from the trips you could take, the upgrades you could afford, the memories you're out there to create. Fuel cost is often treated as fixed, immutable, the price of admission. But as we've seen, a significant portion of that cost is variable. shaped by choices, habits, and information. The marine industry builds extraordinary machines. Modern outboards are more reliable, more powerful, and more refined than anything available a generation ago. But ownership is more than a transaction, it's a relationship. And, like any relationship, it works best when both sides tell the truth. For too long, the truth about efficiency has lived in service manuals and engineering reports, available, technically, but never emphasized where it counts. That silence has cost boaters collectively billions of dollars over the decades. Not through malice, through inertia, through a system where no one's job is to speak up. Now you know what they didn't tell you. What you do next is up to you. What's coming? This investigation focused on fuel, the most visible, most recurring cost of boat ownership. But it's not the only place where knowledge gaps extract a toll. In our next documentary, we're going deeper into the engineering decisions that determine why some outboards last 3,000 hours and others fail at 800. We've obtained service records, internal communications, and first-hand accounts from technicians who've seen patterns the public rarely hears about. That story is coming soon. If you found value in what you've watched today, subscribe and turn on notifications. Share this with a friend who boats. Drop a comment telling us how much you spend on fuel each season, and whether any of these fixes surprised you, because the more we learn together, the harder it becomes for silence to win. The water is yours. The knowledge